Brought to you by Penguin.
Difficult Women, written and read by Helen Lewis. For all the difficult women, and Jonathan, who lives with one. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. George Bernard Shaw, 1903. Or Woman, Helen Lewis, 2020. Introduction. An imperfect history. What does it mean to be a difficult woman? I'm not talking about being rude, thoughtless, obnoxious, or a diva. First of all, difficult means complicated, and this book contains a host of complicated women. A thumbs-up, thumbs-down approach to historical figures is boring and reductive. Most of us are more than one thing. Everyone is problematic. In this book, you will meet women with views which are unpalatable to modern feminists. You will meet women with views which are unpalatable to their contemporaries. A history of feminism should not try and sand off the sharp corners of the movement's pioneers, or write them out of the story entirely if their sins are deemed too great. It must allow them to be just as flawed, just as human, as men. Why are girls to be told that they resemble angels, wrote Mary Wollstonecraft, but to sink them below women? We don't have to be perfect to deserve equal rights. The idea of role models is not necessarily a bad one, but the way they're used in feminism can dilute a radical political movement into feel-good inspiration porn. Holding up a few exceptions is no substitute for questioning the rules themselves. And in our rush to champion historical women, we are distorting the past. Take the wildly successful children's book, Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, which has sold more than 1 million copies. It tells 100 empowering, moving, and inspirational stories, promising that these are true fairy tales for heroines who definitely don't need rescuing. Its entry for the fashion designer Coco Chanel mentions that she wanted to start a business, and a wealthy friend of hers lent her enough money to make her dream come true. It does not mention that Chanel was the lover of a Nazi officer, and very probably a spy for Hitler's Germany. In the 1930s, she tried to remove that wealthy friend from the company under racist laws which forbade Jews to own businesses. In the name of inspiring little girls living in a male-dominated world, the book doesn't so much airbrush Coco Chanel's story as sandblast it with a high-pressure hose. Do you find Chanel's wartime collaboration with the Nazis empowering? I don't, although admittedly she does sound like a woman who didn't need rescuing. The real Coco Chanel was clever, prejudiced, talented, cynical, and interesting. The pale version of her boiled down to a feminist saint is not. I can excuse that approach in a children's book, but it's alarming to see the same urge in adults. We cannot celebrate women by stripping politics, and therefore conflict, from the narrative. Unfurl the bunting, and don't ask too many questions. It creates a story of feminism where all the opponents are either cartoon baddies or mysteriously absent, where no hard compromises have to be made, and internal disagreements disappear. The one true way is obvious, and all good people follow it. Feminists are on the right side of history, and we just have to wait for the world to catch up. Life does not work like that. It would be much easier if feminist triumphs relied on defeating a few bogeymen, but grotesque sexists like Donald Trump only have power because otherwise decent people voted for them. There were women who opposed female suffrage. Women are the biggest consumers of magazines and websites which point out other women's physical flaws. There is no gender gap in support for abortion rights. People are complicated, and making progress is complicated too. If modern feminism feels toothless, it is because it has retreated into two modes: empty celebration or shadowboxing with outright bastards. Neither deals with difficulty, and so neither can make a difference. Women's history should not be a shallow hunt for heroines. Too often, I see feminists castigating each other for admiring the Pankhursts, autocrats, Andrea Dworkin, too aggressive, Jane Austen, too middle class, Margaret Atwood, worried about due process and sexual harassment accusations, and Germaine Greer, where do I start? I recently read a piece about how I was problematic for having expressed sympathy for the Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. My crime was to say that his confirmation hearing had been turned into a media circus, and even those accused of sexual assault deserve better.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?